Member Arell?
Here.
Board Member Blakely?
Here.
Board Member Gross?
Here.
Board Member Mosel?
Here.
Board Member Sherry? Absent. Board Member Zink?
Here.
Vice Chair Mansinghing?
Here.
Chair Winky?
Here.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So let's open general business to public comment. Anyone wishing to speak on any subject not on our agenda? Do we have anything written? Okay, seeing no one in the audience and nothing written, I'll close public comment at this time. And B, which is approval of the minutes for architectural review meeting of last session, July 28, 2008. We don't have the minutes available yet, so we need a motion to table the approval till next, what's 2 weeks from now, whatever that is? August 25th. First by Gary. Second by Chris.
Second.
Is that it? Were you here? Were you here?
I wasn't.
Okay, let's do this. Jim, first by Jim then. I'm not sure if the person who's not here can make the motion. Who wasn't here, so we'll assume not. Okay, any other discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? Great. So the consent calendar. Michelle?
Yes, we have the Monday, August 4th consent calendar last week. Item A, 415 East De La Guerra Street, final approval with conditions. Item B, 1205 Coast Village Road, final approval as submitted of the review after final. Item C, 2541 Modoc, preliminary approval with conditions. Item D, 1021 Alphonse Street, final approval as noted. Item E, 235 East Haley, final approval with conditions. And item F, 3761 State Street, final approval as submitted. Items were reviewed by Paul Zink.
Okay. No landscape ones?
No.
Great. All right. So who wants to make a motion and second it? First by Chris, second by Paul. Great. Any other discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? Next. August 11th, I guess.
Consent calendar for today, Monday, August 11th. Item A, 826 West Pedregosa Street, final approval as submitted of review after final. Item B, 900 block of Fellowship Road, final approval as submitted. Item C, 730 Miramonte Drive, continued 1 week. Item D, 1699 Firestone Road, final approval as submitted. Item E, 423 West Victoria Street, postponed 2 weeks at the request of the applicant. Item F, 740 Dolores Drive, final approval with conditions. Item G, 2541 Modoc Road, preliminary approval with conditions. Item H, 100 Bronca Avenue. 2541 Modoc Road received final approval with conditions, and landscaping continued 2 weeks. And item H, 100 Bronca Avenue, preliminary approval of architecture and landscaping. Yes, with landscaping conditions.
That was H?
Item
Okay.
H.
All right,
And items were reviewed by Christopher Manson-Hing and Carol Gross.
Okay. I'd like to make a motion.
I
Second.
make a motion for
First by
approval.
Chris, second by Carol. Any other discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Motion passes. All right. Announcements. Requests by applicants for continuances. All that stuff. Withdrawals.
Mr. Chair?
Oh,
I'm going to make an announcement on item 2. I will be stepping down if Steve House shows up, and if he's not here, then I will represent the sign committee.
Oh, okay. Any future agenda items and appeals? Well,
I have make a quick announcement regarding last meeting's request for enforcement cases.
right.
The McDonald's and on the Mesa, the exposed rooftop equipment, and the exterior lighting at the gas station on Montecito Street. I've talked to Renee Brook, the zoning enforcement supervisor, and she's elevated those cases to a higher status. So we'll hopefully get
Great.
some more movement on those soon.
Maybe septic
Thank you.
Up to orange now.
Yep.
All right. Anything else? Okay. Subcommittee reports. Do you have any subcommittees?
Yes, sign and arts. Yes, display on State Street.
State Street, okay.
There we are.
What's that?
All the
Stuff.
art on State Street.
Yeah?
Well, look at it. No.
Find your favorite one and tell us about next week. All right. Any new possible ordinance violations?
Mr. Chair,
Chris?
I was under the impression that the Brooks Institute on Coulter Street, the entrance, the elevator lobby entrance facing the World Market we had approved a canopy, a metal canopy for that entrance. And I have not seen it on the building, and I'm wondering if there was a change in the design but I wonder if they could check into that, because I clearly remember there was a metal canopy that was designed over the entrance there.
Did you get the address? Okay.
Yeah, we'll look into that.
Thanks so much.
Anything else?
No.
What are we at with the landscaping at Mesa Shopping Center? It's done? Done deal?
To be honest, I really don't know where we are. We had asked to look into it, and I believe that Randy Mudge was going to review the drawings to see if there were any discrepancies, and before he was able to come back to the board, I think that's when his resignation had come in.
Okay.
And so I'm not 100% sure what happened.
We did have Jaime and myself went out and reviewed the approved plans, and they looked to be what was approved. And as far as continuing landscape plans, they went recently for a review after final at McDonald's to revise some landscaping plans, and those were approved. So as far as we're concerned, everything's done and good there.
Does it look like everything was planted? Have you been by there lately, you guys?
I have
It's like it's fully planted. Short, but planted. So the only thing saved tall were the eucalyptus trees at the other end.
I just have a question regarding that McDonald's landscaping. On the original plan that we looked at, didn't have McDonald's, so who approved the second portion of the McDonald's landscaping?
I don't recall offhand. I can look into that, though.
Could you please? Thank you.
Is that it?
Yes. And we had no landscaper at that time.
Okay. It's like scratching at a scab a little bit on that one, but all right. So we're a little early for our first one. If the Measure G approved item is listening, they come on down. We'll take a few-minute break. It's supposed to be scheduled for 3:30, and we'll start as soon as it says Rob Pearson, Finance Director, is coming. Is that correct? Okay. So we'll take take an indefinite break until he shows up. Approved for November 4th, 2008 election ballot. So I'll let the applicant describe it.
Thank you.
Your name for the record.
Hi, my name is Bob Pearson, and I'm the city's finance director. And I'd first like to begin by thanking you all for allowing me some time on your agenda today.
Your mic up, right?
I'm good, I think.
Yeah.
I'm wired to go. I'd like to thank you for allowing me some time on your agenda to talk about Measure G. Measure G is a ballot measure that will appear on the November ballot for the City of Santa Barbara voters. The City Council voted unanimously on July 1st to place this measure on the November ballot. And so I guess I'll start with, I'm just going to follow along, start with what is a utility users tax, because that's what Measure G is about utility users tax. A little background. Oh, we got to just keep hitting cancel. Utility users tax, or UUT, is a local revenue source. It's a tax revenue that the city has levied since the 1970s in one form or another, so almost 40 years this tax has been in effect. So it's not a new tax, it's an existing tax, as I said, about 40 years old. And it is a local tax, provides local funding for police, fire, 911, emergency communications, parks and recreation, library services, and street and pothole repairs. It's one of our critical local revenue sources because it is one of the few revenue sources that the city has that the state can't take away from us. And as you may or may not know, the state has made a habit over the years of taking revenue from the city in order to try to address their own budget problems, and indeed they're talking about that once again this year. So the next slide is the utility users tax. There are some 460 cities in the state of California. Over 150 of the cities and counties in the state of California have a utility users tax. Our utility users tax, that, as I said, has been in effect since 1970s, is currently and has been since 1978 a general 6% tax levied on consumers, levied on consumer utility services, including water, electric, natural gas, refuse or trash service, cable TV, and telephone. The piece we're going to be talking about today is telephone and cable TV. Sometimes we were referring to them as telecommunications and video. Those two pieces alone generate almost $5.1 million in revenue for the city, just those two pieces. The utility users tax as a whole is almost $14 million, and when you include the electric and water and refuse, natural gas as well. But just on the two pieces that are the subject of Measure G, it's $5.1 million. 50% of that goes to the city's general fund, which supports police, fire, Parks and Rec, community development, and human services. Public safety, police and fire represents 50% of the city's general fund, and so in a sense, of the half of the utility tax that goes to the general fund, roughly half of it is spent on public safety. The other 50% of the tax goes to support streets maintenance activities, including pothole repair, slurry seal, even some overlays from time to time. So all of our utility tax, all 14 million of it, is split, half of it going to the streets fund and half of it going to the general fund. But again, the piece we're focusing on as part of Measure G is the piece on telecommunications, telephone, and cable TV or video. Why now? Why are we going to the voters in November on these two pieces of the utility tax, which has been in place, as I said, for over 35 years? One of the reasons is the ordinance does indeed, as I say, date from the 70s. And we were talking this morning about some of the things that we remembered from the 70s, like leisure suits and shoulder-length hair on guys like me. And you can imagine that things that were in the 70s are a bit outdated. And that's true with our utility users tax on telecommunications and cable TV as well. An ordinance that was drafted in the 70s could not have possibly foreseen the technological revolution that we have enjoyed over the last 10 or 15 years, let alone the last 35 years. And so it really is a matter of updating an ordinance that has become pretty much out of date. The other issue is that because it is out of date, certain cities' utility users taxes on telephone, telecommunications are currently the subject of litigation. The cities are being sued by the telephone companies over the validity of their telephone utility users tax. And by putting this measure on the ballot and having the voters reauthorize the existing tax, will immunize the city's utility tax from potential litigation. We don't know how that will come out, but the council felt it was prudent not to wait to find out. And so there really are two reasons. One is the update of the 70s style ordinance. And that's really the one reason, and there's two pieces to that. One is the outdated technology, and the other piece is the litigation. So Measure G proposes a modern communications tax ordinance to replace the existing ordinance we have. It includes modern definitions, which are technology neutral. And technology neutral, I'll give you an example of that. You may have heard of telephone service, goes commercial name is Vonage. It's Voice over Internet Protocol, or VoIP. By any other name, that's a telephone service. You use your same old-fashioned handset, it's telephone service. But currently, if Vonage customers within the city of Santa Barbara are not subject to our existing utility users tax simply because the technology used to deliver that telephone service is different than twisted pair copper wires that Verizon uses to deliver their telephone service. And in fact, Cox Communication now, as you well know, is delivering digital telephone service as well. And so by making it technology neutral, we are ensuring tax equity, which is ensuring that all of the providers and all of the citizens are on the same level playing field and are paying the same tax on the same service. The other thing the City Council has proposed to do in the ballot measure is to reduce the existing tax rate from 6% to 5.75%. And it's our best estimate, and it is only that by reducing the tax rate 0.25%, that the outcome of that will be essentially revenue neutral. That this is not to raise additional revenue. In fact, if anything, I think that by lowering the rate to 5.75%, we will actually see our revenue decrease for the first few years at least. Another example I want to give you is cable TV. As you may or may not know, both Verizon and AT&T are currently offering television service over the internet. It's called IPTV, Internet Protocol Television. Verizon is our local service. We're a local Verizon service area there, as far south, as close to us as Ventura and Thousand Oaks, offering their television service, which competes directly with cable TV. Right now, if they were to come to Santa Barbara, the Verizon, as they call it, their brand name is Fios service, would not be taxable, whereas Cox Communication Services would continue to be taxable. And that is another example of the changing technology. It's still television. You still turn on your TV with your remote control. You get the same channels basically, but one service would be taxable and one would not. And that's a matter of a tax equity issue. Again, both for the citizens who may be able to afford the newer, more modern technology and therefore would avoid the tax, while the citizens who stick with the traditional technology would still be paying it. And of course, it would put some of the vendors at a competitive disadvantage compared to others. So, but I think the point here is reducing the tax from 6 to 5.75%. The next slide is actually the approved ballot measure wording. This is what will appear on the ballot, and I think I'll actually read most of it for you. It says, "Shall Santa Barbara adopt an ordinance reducing the telecommunication utility users tax from 6 to 5.75% to fund police, fire, 911, parks, recreation, gang prevention, and after-school programs for at-risk youth, senior services, street repairs, public transit, and other general fund services, exempting low-income seniors, prohibiting a tax rate increase without voter approval, requires equal treatment of all taxpayers regardless of technology, annual audits, public review of expenditures, and local control of all revenue." So that's as many words as the law allowed us to have in a ballot measure title. So. But that's what will appear on the ballot. Sure.
If this is given a no, it stays where it is now.
That's correct.
The clumsy written one, that's 6%.
That's correct.
Okay. So really, it's a tax decrease.
It is. It is. And you're absolutely right that if the voters were to say no to this, then we're left with what we've got now, which would be imperfect, but it would also be at 6% instead of 5.75%.
It also doesn't have a 50-50 split on the funds, right?
The new one?
Yeah.
Yes, it does. I mean, it's not a legally binding split. I think that our position as staff has been that since the 1977 time frame when the council added the split, that was done pre-Prop 13, pre-Prop 218, pre-Prop all of these things that now require voter approval. And I believe it's staff's position that what we have now is a general tax, and that the split between 50% streets and 50% general fund is essentially a policy decision that has survived since that time. There's never been in my 20 years here ever any effort to change that. And so I don't think this changes anything in that regard.
Jim?
And satellite TV.
Yes. DBS, direct broadcast satellite TV, is exempt from all local taxes by federal legislation.
But the cell phones will be taxed now.
They already are, and
They
they will
already are.
continue to be. We already tax cell phones, and that would not change under this. The other thing I should mention, very important, is that currently under federal law, local governments are prohibited from taxing what you pay for internet access. So whatever you pay, your monthly service charge to Cox or to Verizon for your DSL service, currently by federal law, we are precluded from levying our utility tax on that service. And so that's something that we don't do now, and we would not propose to do. But the City Council wanted to make it very clear that even if federal law were to change in the future, our ordinance, they asked the draft that was presented by staff, they asked that it be modified to make it perfectly clear that even if federal law changes in the future to permit local taxes on internet access, that our utility tax ordinance would preclude it. So it's written clearly into this draft ordinance that's going before the voters that internet access will not be taxable regardless of what happens in the future to the federal law.
So just to follow up to that, so the voice over internet, which is the telephone service that you can get through the internet, you will tax that portion of it, but not the internet service itself, which is that what you're saying?
That's exactly right.
So you're gonna split a service that presently comes through the internet now and pull out the voice over internet and say that we now have the ability to tax that. Is that it?
No. Well, yes and no. I mean, yes, we will tax the telephone service, but not the access. But we won't have to pull out anything because you don't buy your internet access from Vonage. You buy your internet access usually from, in this community, from Cox Communications or from Verizon. Okay. And that's a charge that appears on your bill, DSL service, cable modem service. Okay. That's the part that's not taxable.
I guess if I could be hate to be a little bit more in depth here, like the internet is developing, and they already have like university courses and stuff like that where the professors in Australia, but the students are in Nepal or wherever it is, and they can see up on the screen, and then they can also talk to the professor.
Right.
So the actual talking to the professor will now become taxable?
No.
Is that it?
No.
Oh.
Because it's streaming through internet service.
Oh,
No. That's not correct.
Okay.
That's not correct.
Here's
the thing to keep in mind is we're taxing telephone service. Telephone service. I mean, if we just think in layperson's terms, what we're taxing, what we've always taxed, and what we will continue to tax is telephone service. Mm-hmm. Standard, everyday, pick up the phone, dial home telephone service. That's what's getting taxed. Not downloads, not YouTube, not, even Skype, if you've heard of Skype. Skype is actually a free internet-based telephone service.
Oh, I see what you're saying. So, you're saying the digital telephone that you get over the internet, or that you can get from your internet, like Cox.
Yes.
That's what you're taxed.
Yes.
Okay.
It uses your normal
but not the voice line that you can get with an internet stream.
That's correct.
Okay.
That's exactly right.
Right.
Thank you for clarifying that.
Right.
Yeah. I'll just finish up on that Skype example because I've used Skype and it's actually a free computer-to-computer telephone service over the internet. We would probably, technically, that's a taxable service. But the fact of the matter is that 6% or 5.75% of zero is zero. And so even though it technically might be taxable, there is no taxable implication because it's a free service. And I think I think your questions are good ones because I think they illustrate sometimes the confusion that arises over the different ways that these same services can be provided to people these days. It used to be there was only one way.
Yes.
But I think it helps to try to keep in mind that we're taxing cable TV and telephone. However that is provided, that's the service that we are taxing, those services, those two. So that's the way it is currently, and that's the way it's proposed to remain. Just a couple more things. Voters in more than 26 California cities have already approved revised, modernized telecommunications utility users tax ordinances. There's been 26 of them put to the voters up through today, and all 26 of them have been approved. Some of them, like ours, have proposed a modest reduction in the rate. Others have proposed to leave the rate the same, but all 26 have passed, including Ventura, City of Ventura, City of LA, and 24 others. So, last couple slides is that the election, as you probably know, is November 4th. Vote by mail, absentee, or other vote by mail balloting begins October 6th. To participate in the election, as I'm sure you all know, you must be registered to vote by October 20th. And then we've set up a website that you can get to off the city's homepage that contains the ballot measure, the detailed proposed ordinance, all of the resolutions that were adopted by council and the staff reports, arguments for and against Measure G, and how to get more information. So, if there are any other questions, I'd be glad to answer them.
Any questions additional questions from the board? Carol?
Well, why are you making this presentation to the ABRs?
I'm actually making presentations to every single one of the city's boards and commissions. The city council, excuse me, actually commissioned a citizens survey, a public opinion research poll, if you will. And one of the things it showed was that there was a dramatic, surprising to me, but then again probably not, lack of understanding of what the utility tax is. In many cases, lack of understanding that we even had a utility tax, even though it appears on each one of your utility bills every month. I know you know this. You look at your telephone bill down in the taxes and other charges, and there's like 8 lines that make absolutely no sense to any rational human being, and we're one of those lines. And so that was really the outcome of that, was that because of that lack of understanding, the council felt that a public education campaign would be advisable to try to educate the public about what the tax is, what the proposal is for Measure G, and that it'll be on the ballot on November 4th. As you probably are all aware, the city is precluded by law from lobbying or spending any public resources to lobby for or against any ballot measure. And that's not my job, and that's why, I'm hopefully, would agree, hopefully, that all I'm doing is trying to present public information in hopefully a fair and unbiased manner, and let the voters decide what they want to do.
Okay.
That's why.
Any other questions? Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks. Yeah. I'm worried. Because this has been a grueling day so far, we're going to take another break and wait for our 4 o'clock meeting, which has been scheduled for 32 North Cali Cesar Chavez, our first and last item. So we see them in 15 minutes. Going to go with. Okay, so this is the ABR. Your name for the record, and then we'll go from there.
Mr. Chairman, my name is Kathleen Weinheimer, here with Eddie Langhorn, the owner of the property. And as you stated, the sign is currently up on the tower, which was the original exception request. And the sign committee, in working with them through several meetings, we discussed lowering the sign, and we were agreeable to lowering the sign. Now the discussion is just how low is acceptably lower. So we're here today to talk with you about the location that the sign committee is suggesting versus the location that Mr. Langhorn is requesting, and to see if we can reach some resolution. I included in my letter to you, I don't know who's received what. Perhaps
we all got them.
Okay.
Got them, read them.
Got them, read them. Know what you're doing. Excellent. The photo simulations show the property with the landscaping in a developed state. As you know, if you've been by that property, The landscaping has been installed. It is a lovely building, and it's a section of Santa Barbara that's in desperate need of landscaping and beautification. Mr. Langhorne has a landscape nursery operation in Goleta, so he's looking forward to maintaining the landscaping and enhancing the streetscape along the front of this building. But toward that end, the location that the sign committee is requesting would be blocked by the landscaping when it was matured, particularly the landscaping on the trellis. This is the location that the sign committee would like, and the photo simulation shows
Bring that up,
the sign. And I don't of that one. I have an extra set of the,
I don't know what's in that one. A couple over there.
yeah.
So really for the board, as you're saying, this is the picture of without the tree growing,
Right.
with the tree growing.
Right.
The sign committee would like it to be at this location.
Right, and
And it's hidden in that location. Same picture.
we would like it at this location. Right now, it's up on the tower, and that was the subject of the exception that we agreed we will not pursue.
This is not higher than the 5.5 feet.
Right, both of these meet the ordinance
And
requirements.
has this one been to the sign
Yes,
committee?
yes, this was the last conversation at the sign committee. Mr. House and Mr. Zink were the members who were
Right.
most in participation at most of the meetings, so I think they were most familiar with the discussions that we had relative to that. My understanding of the committee's perspective was that they were interested in a pedestrian level signage. Our concern on that, in addition to the fact that we believe it would be blocked by the landscaping, is that in this particular instance, the business served does not attract a pedestrian clientele. This is a wholesale operation for large rock carving. The signage is necessary to direct truck traffic and deliveries to the building, not to entice passersby to come in and buy rock.
Okay. Seems pretty straightforward. As presentation, does the sign committee want to say anything in response, or?
Well, first order of business, of course, is to imagine there are no signs there. So you're starting with a clean slate, and if someone was coming in, you would want to consider where's the appropriate place to locate signs. We generally don't want signs.
Did you say your name for the record?
Okay, Steve House from the sign committee. So we generally don't want signs that are oriented towards the freeway or towards a far. They should be for wayfinding. Preferably at a more pedestrian level, and preferably relating to an entrance. We examined the various proposals they've come before us with, and I've been out to the site, and it is my personal feeling that the signage where proposed doesn't accomplish any of those, doesn't relate to an entrance, is not pedestrian scaled, and it is not even, in my opinion, what serves the applicant the best. Having been to the site, my concern would be that this sign located where it is above the trellis could just as easily be obscured in the future by this tree or vines on top of this trellis, and actually would be much more visible lower down on that wall, serving people coming from that direction on Sosquez. Is that where you're going?
Yeah,
Hi,
Cesar
Cesar Chavez.
Cesar Chavez. The other sign on this elevation would be well located, actually behind this tree, I suppose, so on this frontage, perhaps to the right of the door. Very visible from cars coming from the perpendicular street. The other consideration is they have no signage relating to their driveway, which is where supposedly these trucks that need to find the business are heading towards. So there just seemed to be no justification for this location. And, we really would like to work with the applicant. And we just did not feel that this was serving anybody well, the applicant or the city. So that was our opinion of.
Okay. Could I ask you a quick question?
Certainly.
This is the kind of industrial zone of town. Is there any other recent buildings that have gone through this upgrade and have been keeping, is there sort of a hybrid between sort of industrial neighborhood signage and then, you know what I'm saying, with some of the past applicants?
If I understand what you're saying, the applicant did come before us with some examples of other buildings with signage located high on the building. Often that's the building name, Vercal Building, etc., or they predate the modern sign ordinance, or they were approved a long time ago. Generally, your field of view in the horizontal is much wider than it is in the vertical. So for whether it's truck or it's car or it's pedestrian, something located more of your normal field of view height-wise is just the appropriate solution.
Mm-hmm. Carol?
Is there any additional signage that is directing trucks to which driveway is actually the one they're supposed to take if they're picking up or making a delivery?
No, this is the only signage on the building. We do not own the driveway that provides access to this building.
Just over here.
Right. Mr. Chair, you do raise an interesting point that I should have brought up as well. The other signs on virtually every building on that street are at roof height, and some of them are quite new, such as West Marine. So it certainly was done with this current set of regulations in place. And that's one that doesn't meet the limitation of it being the name of the building any more than Pat Scott Masonry is the name of this building.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Because I would probably suggest to the board, as I'm thinking this through, is that if this was a certain part of town, State Street and other commercial districts, there's a hard and fast rule that we've been following for years about these type of signs. And then in other parts, the funk zone, for example, signage, industrial areas, signage may be part of the funkiness, may be part of the vocabulary of an area that gives it that distinction. And if we think if we want to overthrow the decision of the sign committee, we would have to be not just saying, yeah, we like it this way, this is fine. I think we need to have some implicit understanding and explanation of why we think that we could do that in this particular area.
Mr. Chairman?
Mm-hmm. Carol?
Just to kind of on the sake of speeding things up, I think the sign committee policies and guidelines add to the overall city, regardless what zone we're in. And Mr. House's explanation of why the sign committee made that decision makes a lot of sense to me. And I've sat on the sign committee before in the past, and I understand the process of looking at the guidelines, and there is a reasonable evaluation on why those guidelines are there. I think the strongest argument that I heard from Mr. House is that the higher signage on the tower, in my mind, I have to agree that it doesn't add to the visibility of a truck or anyone trying to find the property. I don't, unless the applicant would like to make their case, I really don't see any virtue. And one of the charms of the signs of Santa Barbara is that it celebrates the entrance. It welcomes you. And the character of being the funk zone is really in the character of the sign and the character of the front facade. That's where the charm comes in, not that there's a sign up on a tower necessarily. And unless I'm informed differently, I would like to just make a motion that we uphold the decision of the sign committee.
Mr. Chair, let me interject real quick. Before we make any motions, can you open public comment?
Oh, yeah. Okay, hold that thought. You gave me some letters too, didn't you? So I'd like to open public comment at this time. I don't see them. Are they in this list? Oh, here they are. Okay, so I have two letters. I'll start out with Paula Westbury. Never put the same sign back. It was taken down already. Full of something, making all well. Impossible to discuss too much. Close thing to start with. So can't tell if she's for it, but it sounds like she's not for it. The second is from Randy Mudge, and he asked for this to be read into the record. I urge you to support the sign committee's denial of the as-built signs for Pascott Masonry. The as-built sign on the north elevation detracts from the architecture. The location of the sign is designed to be viewed solely from the freeway and constitutes advertising rather than acting as a wayfinding device. This is clearly a violation of the letter and intent of the sign ordinance. Thank you, Randy Mudge. Okay. Seeing no one else from the public, I'll close public comment at this time. And bring it back to the board where someone was making a motion, I think.
The motion is to support the decision of the sign committee.
Okay. Is that how we're going to do that? Do we deny the appeal?
You deny the appeal.
You can do it a variety of ways. You can deny the appeal. You can, and part of a condition, you can craft a new placement of the sign. You can work with the applicants to try and come up with a new design.
So let's start with deny the appeal by the applicant.
Or refer it back to sign.
Referred back to sign committee. Let's add some more stuff to that. You want to add anything in your motion?
I think that's kind of it.
I like the stuff you were saying that Steve had mentioned. It's not per the ordinance and it's not wayfinding. It doesn't seem to be located in an area that people would be entering a building, and it's kind of wayfinding. Or visitors visiting by truck would do. I don't know. It may be out of our purview to speculate that since we're only here for looking at this for a few minutes, but what do you think? It's good enough? Leave it out?
So moved as that motion.
I'll second it with a question.
Okay.
Since part of this...
Second by Jim?
Yeah, since we've all been on the sign committee at some point in time. Since this was supposedly also, from what I was reading, information for the trucks to find, can we add that we'd like to see a sign on the east side of the building saying delivery, since there is no instructions of where to go? Or take it back to the sign committee and let them look at it?
We'd welcome that as a recommendation.
Okay.
And the east side being the back end?
Yeah, the
south side.
According to the paper, would be the east
Or are you
side.
talking about the east side of the tower?
No, on the side of the building. Adjacent to the driveway.
Okay, so let's
with
call
an
it the
arrow
south
saying,
end.
yeah.
The ocean side.
Yeah.
Oh, well, according to the plan,
This
it's
is
the east.
Yeah. the real south.
The real side.
I mean, the not real south, but the city south. All right. So we have a first and second. Any other discussion?
I have discussion, but you might as well vote first.
Well, we can't. They're discussing something else.
Okay, well, no, you have a motion.
We
have a motion, so-
Second, we're under discussion.
All right, under discussion, I'm just going to say that I don't think that there's an issue with this sign. It's the size of the sign is correct. The style of the sign is palatable. I don't think that it's particular. I mean, if it said Pat Scott Masonry Building on it, then it would be naming the building. It's really diminutive in comparison to other signs in that neighborhood, and it is very industrial. Even the rescue mission has a larger sign, and
Higher.
and higher. I really think that this particular sign is the type of tasteful sign that we usually look for. So I will not vote for this motion as it is, because I think that lowering it takes it a little bit more away from the freeway. But as it stands, I think that the sign's okay.
Okay. Clay? It's near your neighborhood. Or your office.
So, Chair, I drive by this building all the time. I've never had an issue with the sign. If the board feels like we should uphold the sign committee's wishes on it, then I'm sort of ambivalent at this point. I'm going to abstain because I don't have an issue with it. I drive by there a lot, and I if somebody asked me where Pat Scott Masonry was, I'd be able to tell them. So for me, it's wayfinding enough. And nobody walks down there. There's no walk. I mean, nobody walks down there except the bums.
Right, who stand in front of the sign. Yes.
And if I'm not mistaken, at this point, the sign's high.
Yes.
Right?
And,
So it's not like this yet on the...
Right. No, we are solely discussing
trying to make a
the
solution where you
location on the
just lower it
tower.
on the building.
Right.
Okay. And from your...
Is it appropriate for me to make one more comment?
Sure.
When people cite other examples, we often ask staff to verify whether or not that example has a permit in the first place. I don't think the rescue mission sign facing the freeway has a permit.
Okay.
Can we call for a vote so we know where we're at?
Well, if you call for a vote, there's no more discussion.
Right. Then we're done.
Well, then it's done.
Well, we're still under discussion.
Oh.
Then we'd be done. So I just wanted to make that clear because somebody had mentioned that they don't have a problem with the sign the way it is now. I kind of do have a problem with the way the sign is now, which I'm glad. So at least we're looking at different ways to put it. I don't think necessarily, from my point of view, just lowering it, keeping it in the same location is the way to go. Because originally they were there, I'm sure, so that people driving down the freeway could see where Scott Masonry is. You get off of it. Yeah. So that, that made sense to have it that high. It doesn't make sense for the ordinance. So in this case, we have a sign located that doesn't seem to make any sense for, at least in my opinion, to have it on the corner, unless you were going to try to get people to, that they couldn't see it from there. We go through this even at La Cumbra. Can't you see that sign as you're driving up? So I think there's some work to be done still with the sign committee. They're decent people. They do a lot of sign review, and they know the overall. They're more careful about signage than even applicants are. And just wanting to get a sign up on the thing. So I recommend going back to the sign committee, even if you can figure out a way to make your case for that again. I don't see that the board, from my opinion, I don't see that the board is finding this to be an acceptable, aesthetically good example. It's either ambivalent, they don't care, or it's not aesthetically, does not seem to be a good example of how and where to place the signs, which is what the sign committee looks at.
Just so we're clear, as to placement, no one has an objection as to the style and design of the sign. We've not heard any objection from the sign committee about the looks of the sign.
Right.
I just don't want to
and
head
all
down
the
that
stuff
road,
that was
too.
mentioned, I mentioned the pin lettering and all that.
Right.
Size of it, Gary mentioned, that's fine. So, anything else you want to add?
Yeah, Mr. Chair. In this particular case, I have to say I'm a little bit like Clay. I'm a little ambivalent as to which way to go. But I think that I feel that I have a feeling that when I'm in this case about an appeal to a sign committee's decision, that to go against the sign committee's decision, I have to feel very strongly that it is a bad decision made by the sign committee, and I don't see that has happened. That I think that they have done it all in good faith, and I think that their comments are strong, and I think that they're well-meaning, and I, like you, feel that there's a better place to be found in working with them. So it's not as though I'm saying that. I just don't want to say that I disagree with the sign committee and that this should be thing, because I don't feel that I want strong enough to feel that way. So it would be a case in which I either uphold the sign committee's recommendation or abstain, and that's how I feel.
Okay. Well, right here we've got a motion for denial of the appeal, which would basically state that their presentation to us has not had merit enough for us to overturn the sign committee, which is what we've stated later on, that we send them back to the sign committee.
All right.
So, anybody else want to add anything before we go? And remember, the second part of the motion to send it was to add another sign on the ocean side of the south end of the building at the driveway area as something to look at for the applicant and the sign committee. Correct? Did you get all that? Okay, so we have a first and second with those comments. No other discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed?
Aye.
Abstain? So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 1. Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
We can just keep 1.
Thank you all.
Thanks, Steve. There's a lot of stuff here, too. I don't know
Yes,
what
we
to
take
put
that.
there. Okay, so, thank you. Do you have on this? Do you have this? Okay, that concludes our agenda for today. The fastest ever, maybe, in the history of, in honor of the American win in the pool yesterday. So I will conclude the Architecture Board review and adjourn it. Thank you for watching.